Today on the Videomaker podcast, we talk all about visual storytelling. Again, we go into more on this topic. Today we talk about camera angles and sound design. And sound design is something that Chris is really passionate about. He's really knowledgeable about this. And camera angles, we're all kind of knowledgeable and passionate about. This is kind of a fundamental of cinematography. So we talk all about how these things can enhance a film or your next project. As always, if you've been listening to the podcast and you enjoy it, we'd love it if you went to iTunes and gave us a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. It's really, really helpful for podcasts like ours. If you're a Spotify user, just hit the heart or the like or the follow button, subscribe. I don't know what it is over there, but hit that button regardless. It'll deliver the podcast right to your mobile device when it comes out every week. It comes out early, 5 a.m. on Monday, and who wants to be up then to click a subscribe button? So at any rate, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Videomaker podcast. I'm Mike Wilhelm, and with me, as always, to my right is Chris Monlux.
I'm over on your left, screen left.
Yeah, from the viewer's perspective. Yeah. And to my left and screen right is Haley LaPlante.
Hello.
And today we continue our conversation about visual storytelling. And as a reminder, you can go watch the whole dang course right now on videomaker.com/courses to our course on visual storytelling. But today we're going to talk about camera angles and sound design. But actually in the meantime, maybe there's like some other things we should talk about. First of all, just like a commemorative moment, we should all be sentimental right now or something, because this is our last podcast. And I think our last shoot of any kind here in this studio.
Yeah, this is, it came on fast, but we've been building another studio right next door. And so the next time we do this, we probably won't be in that studio because we'll still be in the transition. I think we're doing a remote one anyway. But then after that, it'll be all there. But it might look exactly the same to everybody. Other people might. Yeah. Other people, Boring. If we do it. Nice.
Haley has been tasked with doing the set design, so that's why she doesn't want it to look exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it look beautiful.
Yeah. Boring.
Boring.
I don't have a button. I need a button too.
No, I
just
get the
one.
buttons.
You get the buttons. Yeah, I would be too annoying with them. So I want to bring up some. So I watched some a really amazing episodic now it escapes
Umbrella
me.
Academy.
Umbrella
Someone
Academy.
just mentioned that to me this morning also. Like, hey, have you seen the Umbrella Academy? And again, I'm like,
it's
no.
number one trending on Netflix. So it's pretty amazing. I thought it was really good storytelling, really beautiful, and everything. And I thought we would bring some contrast with maybe what Haley watched this weekend.
Oh. I'm getting judged.
A little bit.
Okay. Well, so on Amazon Prime Video, I saw all the Twilight movies pop up and my nostalgia kicked in. Because
nostalgia is worth it.
In high school, I was a very big fan. I went to all the midnight premieres and read all the books. And I had
what team were you on?
Edward.
You're team
I had
Edward.
an Edward poster in my room. See, if we're talking about the actors, I like Taylor Lautner. I thought he was much cuter. But book-wise, I wanted her to end up with Edward.
And Edward's like the Frankenstein guy?
Or is he a vampire? Vampire and wolves, right?
Yeah. So
I have not seen any of those.
Oh,
not a one.
I rewatched them, and the acting is it's terrible, but I still love them all. So.
I was a grown adult when it came out, so I didn't really have.
Yeah, I was like a 15-year-old girl. So
I shouldn't have been going to the theater to see that movie.
What makes this particularly painful to hear about is Haley has been telling us about how she is going to watch Citizen Kane, and she started watching it and she's trying to get her boyfriend watching some black and white movies. And it's like, what did you watch? What's this time? Did you finish Citizen Kane? No, but I watched every Twilight movie.
Oh, I promise I will get through Citizen Kane. It's not that I didn't want to watch it. There were some complications.
Oh, well,
I'm halfway through.
You're halfway through. Well, the Umbrella Academy I thought was really awesome, and I love binging that we can do that in general, but I'm all about episodic. So like I way prefer a longer drawn out story that and each one of them at the end has like a cliffhanger, but then you get to watch them all at the same time. So I don't really know what the point of the cliffhanger is other than to continue watching. It's such a neat story. I was changing the subject just because I really
want
the
sound design of
the sound design. Yeah, well, yeah. I wasn't thinking about the sound design at the time, but I'm sure there was lots of it because there's lots in this in it that is not real. So there's a lot of sound design in the artistic way of combining sounds or making sounds up that aren't real. You know, like how sick is the guy that that made up the sound of a dinosaur? Like we have no idea what dinosaurs sound like. Someone made up a sound for dinosaurs.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
That makes me think of an episode of Friends because Ross is a paleontologist, right?
Yeah.
So he starts teaching at NYU, and they're talking about velociraptors, and they're like, and the speculated sound is something like this. And he goes, ah, 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 and it's just like, sorry, I can't even imitate it that well, but it was so funny.
I just saw that on a meme recently, and I thought it was funny that there a lot of these sound effects or sounds that we hear from Hollywood films are nowhere near. I think there was a bunch of Mythbusters that was about this, like just using sound design, like, you know, just how gooey things are when good sound design happens on certain things and whatnot.
So maybe we should just jump right into it. But
yeah, maybe we should.
Okay, so sound design, for anyone who's unclear, is basically just like the combination of music and sound effects and ambience and all that. I don't know if dialogue is considered part of sound design. But
I think it can. It depends on if you're affecting it or putting it in a space or something like that.
yeah, so like a Darth Vader effect or something.
Well, or if like you're having some people in front of a green screen, you want them to sound like they're in a cavern.
Yeah.
You're going to give a bunch of reverb to the sound design.
Or ADR technically is part of sound design.
Yeah, I guess kind of, yeah. Certainly recording ADR cleans up sound so that you can manipulate quite a bit more. But Chris, you just used a term that I've never heard of when referring to sound, which is gooey.
Gooey.
Yeah, what is that?
Well, I mean, like I'm thinking of like what did I watch? Oh, I was watching Smarter Every Day and Slow Mo Guys. I've been watching a lot of those shows,
Yeah,
and
me
recently they had a behind the scenes talking to the guy that does their sound effects for when they go into slow motion. Because the thing about it is, if you're shooting something at 10,000 frames per second, when you slow it down, it just sounds like a super low frequency because it's so slowed down just because of the physics of sound. So they have to make it all up. And so they shot a tomato and they needed to add sound effects to it. But he said, I'm all out of tomatoes and it's cold outside. So he just had an orange that he used and, really made it real juicy in the way of how it sounded. Like the same idea of like when someone breaks their leg, it does not sound like that. Well, I don't know. I've actually not been around somebody, but it doesn't sound like a celery stick breaking, which is, of course, how you can do it doing like Foley or that kind of thing. So there's so many sound designs, or like, the idea of like what any of the aliens sound like in Star Wars. Like these are fictional characters. Someone got to be creative and come up with a combination of sounds to make it have some kind of feeling. The sound of the Predator, all those things are not real sounds, but they heighten the experience. And those are the gooey sounds to me are the ones that are like hypersensitive, I guess are the words.
Hyper realistic.
Hyper realistic. Yeah, exactly. Like no one's footsteps sound as loud as they do in films. The
classic like punching sound effects.
Yeah, just how hard that sounds.
We need one of those on our soundboard.
Yeah.
If you don't live at my house, every door does not creak the way it does my house for a reason. Every door does. I should probably get some lubricant and put into it, but I kind of like it. I don't know, for a reason. I know when people move around in my house.
That's how you know you're being snuck up upon.
Yeah.
Snuck upon?
Snuck up on. Yeah, snuck up on.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to say. But this is the stuff that I think is really fun. The idea of using like just different, for Foley specifically, that they're replicating things to make things sound more present, right? So if you have someone walking through some gravel, unless they have a mic down on his feet while they're also filming the scene, it's not going to sound the way you would see it in the movie theater and that would be a close mic of maybe it's a boot or whatever it is walking in actual gravel or some other medium that sounds like that. But they're just doing it trying to heighten that realism because we have to bring in more senses to a flat image, right? So in real life, we get 3 dimensions, we get 2 dimensions in a film, and so those different, if we could have smell-o-vision, that'd be another thing to design, right? Is what smells you brought into the film to tell a story correctly. In this case, it's sound.
We define just technically, if some people don't know, what a Foley studio is.
So Foley is like the performance of sound effects, and usually is done in a purpose-built studio that has a stage of sorts that usually has lots of different things, and it's sound effects performed along with scenes. So there'd be a big screen in the room, and these are people performing the sounds as they're going together. So if you wanted heightened footsteps, someone's there acting, probably with boots on their hands, walking through dirt or something like that. Oh, all of a sudden they're on tile. So now they're walking on tile, and the sound of that, or, just all
the celery snapping.
Yeah, exactly. The celery snapping when
Makes
someone
me think
breaks
of high
their...
heels clicking.
Totally.
Like that sound is pretty distinct, but maybe to emphasize it even more. Like click,
Yeah,
click,
yeah.
click.
I've heard people doing the dog's nails on the tile with they would put tape on their fingers and paper clips, and then
That makes sense.
That kind of thing. Or there's just lots of things that just don't sound the way they do. A gun, when a bullet goes through you, it makes no sound.
Yeah.
So there's things that we just have to bring sound to. So Foley is that. I think I saw went to MGM Studios in the Epcot Center, or in Disney World, and I got to go through a studio once, and it was really cool because they have like drawers of different types of media. Like this will be a place, so they'll have like a bunch of gravel, they'll have some bark, they'll have some linoleum, some tile, and a bunch of different types of shoes and that kind of thing. And like I even saw, I'm trying to think of what behind the scenes it was, but it was a guy, and he was wearing high heels doing the Foley. He's like, I'll do anything for a sound effect.
That would be a fun job to be a Foley artist.
Totally. Well, and then there's like the next step of it, which is like people that go and get real ambience or real sounds, like sound designers in that way. Like no one knows what it sounds like inside a beehive. Like we're not going to put our head in there, but if we put a microphone in there, you could give the viewer the sensation that they have their head inside a beehive. So they're collecting those real types of sounds, the sounds of peeling out and burnouts and all that kind of stuff. It's amazing how many different things you use for sound effects. I remember doing this with motion. Like motion graphics and stuff. Like I wanted to have a little shine on the corner, and so we used a champagne ting, and so it just caught your eye. To this, had this glassy feel to it, and all of a sudden the little thing all of a sudden had a way bigger impact, production value to it. So I mean, any kind of scene, even if the scene is ugly shot, you could add a lot of sound design to it, which can be the underscore. It could be the ambience of the room. It could be all sorts of things. Anything you hear, if you think of it, like almost every scene would be really awkward if it was just the sound that was being captured during a scene. Like being on set's like, man, where's the magic? And it's like the magic doesn't happen until later.
You see that a lot if you ever watch like behind the scenes, not behind the scenes, but like outtakes from movies. And you don't want to watch the ones that are like during the credits of the movies, because then they have like usually some music going for the credits or whatever. But if you ever watch the the extras, right, where you're watching the behind the scene or the outtakes, it does seem like that. That's like, oh, this is clearly fake, which is odd because you're actually seeing it as real as it is. Like the actual sounds as they were recorded. And the part that makes it feel fake is the fact that you can't hear any ambient sounds of traffic nearby or crowd noises or anything like that. Yeah, it's just like the person's voice in a quiet room. And
those are the things that take you out of that cinema experience as a viewer, right? Those are the things that make you go, I'm watching a movie, instead of just being in it. But if you really thought about it too much, and I bet you there was quite a bit of getting used to this as technology has gone. Now, right now we've had plenty of high quality sounds added to cinema for decades and decades. But that at first it probably was strange hearing someone so clearly because like, if you're used to just talking amongst people, as soon as someone gets about 10 feet away, you got to almost yell at them. And to be able to have a conversation at a normal voice, it probably was like, oh, that's weird.
Just like it's weird right now with these headphones and microphones.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I talk differently because I can hear myself so well, I guess.
Yeah. I always think of sound effects a lot of times like music, in the sense where you described Foley as sound performed, and I think that's kind of how sound effects are throughout an entire film, that it's really a performance. It's not trying to recreate anything. It's trying to imitate something maybe, or make you hear what you would imagine something sounds like. But even in a lot of cases, I feel like there's a performance where sound does things like builds suspense and then provides the payoff in the sound effects. So the example that I always think of is in Star Wars, one of the prequels. You know, Star Wars always gets a bad rap for their sound because there's all these space battles, and like everyone knows, there's no sound in space. You can't hear anything. It's silent. But yet we see these things flying around, and there's zaps of the laser guns and explosions and all that stuff. And one of the prequels, they have the whole space scene, and you know the music is, you know, going crazy, and there's explosions or whatever. And then like the space station that they were attacking is about to explode. And when it comes to that point, the music comes to a crescendo and it just sort of pauses, and everything goes dead silent for, you know, half a beat. And then the explosion happens. And it reminds me of like that kind of effect in music, you know, like if you're listening to electronic music and you're waiting for the beat to drop, it has this build up, and then it pauses for a half second, and then the bass comes in and everyone goes crazy. And the same kind of thing in this case with sound effects and music building up to this conclusion of this story.
Yeah, you know, I always think of like cutting a scene not much different than like writing a song, and that you're trying to give interest to the listener or the viewer throughout the piece, right? So in a song, it's a counter melody. It's something to keep your, you know, say there's a singer or something like that. It's the piano part that comes right after someone sings, just to keep some kind of thing you interested in. And the same idea of like, it's awkward to be in quiet and silence. We're not in modern world in silence much. So in that case, in Star Wars, like that was it was really powerful because silence, instead of the most, I mean, it could be the loudest crash ever, but it was so much more impactful because all of a sudden it was devoid of sound.
Yeah.
And that difference, that dynamics between the loud and soft made it so much more impactful. I had this experience making commercials, and you know, you're just so used to commercials being so much louder. And one of the clients were like, we just want wind chimes. We don't want a voiceover. We just want pictures and wind chimes. And they had a lot of people who were like, just so happy. Like, that was like my Zen moment while watching a show. I was able to just kind of relax for a second, and made me thought, yeah, I do need a backyard and to buy their stuff they were selling at their backyard center or whatever. But it's impactful it's like seeing a billboard upside down or something like that. It grabs your eye. But sound design is, in general, should not be noticed, right? This is the thing that if you did it really well, no one's going to be like, oh, the sound design, unless they're a nerd or really into that thing. But like most viewers are going to just be into the story. The credit to the power is going to go to the director or the actors within it, not the designers that made all of the intensity in a scene. You know, I can't imagine Darth Vader, who's in this big plastic suit, seeming at all cool if he didn't have his mantra music, you know, coming in. It'd just be this kind of, you know,
this lumbering guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You can hear like the rubber squeaking against itself as he's walking.
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking about that because I have some shoes that squeak, and my son calls me they're SpongeBob shoes. And it's like, because SpongeBob's shoes squeak when he walks, and it's like that's I guess that's a motif, but that it is also the sound design, because you think about a cartoon. Well, none of those sounds are real, right? Everything is fabricated from what you see to what you hear.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's all, there's no real, you know, that's the place where some people say is, you know, dishonesty in film and that kind of thing. But it's like, that's the only reason why it makes it interesting.
You know, I was thinking about something about sound design, that it can help evoke emotion too, right? I'm going to bring up Twilight real quick.
Nice.
Just thinking.
Very
so
emotional.
I just watched it, so it's so fresh in my mind. So thinking about the different vampires, right? And Bella, once she transitions, she has this power where she can project this like force field, like a shield, they call it. And it has a sound, and they even create a visual so you can kind of see it. And it has this like really, I don't know how to describe the sound. It's like glowy or like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ethereal.
Yeah. Right. So, and she's a good vampire, whereas there's the Volturi, who are like kind of the antagonists, I guess. They're like not very nice. Dakota Fanning, she plays one of them. Okay. And her power, she can like paralyze people just by staring at them. And when she does that, it's like this really high pitched, ringing, unpleasant sound.
Totally.
So it's like just thinking about the way they use that, like hers is evoked like this feeling of fear. And then Bella's is like, oh, I'm protecting you. So Just thinking about that.
One sounds pleasant and one sounds kind of harsh.
Yeah, exactly.
I always think of lightsabers in this way, that like you can get knockoff lightsabers and they still sound like lightsabers. They're still.
You're talking about toys, not visual effects. At this point.
Yeah, toys. Well, toys. You find a toy, but like, who knew what sound that was? How did they choose that was the sound for this? Such a important sound to that story. And the same kind of thing is it has a feeling. It all of a sudden now, I just got my lightsaber out. Wasn't making a sound before. Now all of a sudden it's making this glowing sound.
Or even the sounds of the guns they shoot off. It's like a pew 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 pew.
Yeah.
Like doesn't sound like a normal gun. It's like a very
laser.
Specific noise.
What does it sound like again?
Pew pew.
Someone sample that, please, and make it into the pew pew sound song. Nice.
Yeah, but definitely the sound effect, it helps to deliver an emotion that goes along with what the viewer's supposed to feel when that thing comes up, right? Like if it was Thanos and his shield, maybe it would sound quite a bit different.
The thing I always think about projects I've done with a lot of sound design, and you think a video could have a lot of layers. Man, when you start layering sound effects and that they all need maybe a little bit different volume or what have you, or you're doing these thematical themes. So you're okay. This is the sound effect for this type of move. For me, it's usually, a graphic moving or a transition or something like that it has a sound, but that it can get so, I've done, 30, 40 layers of sound effects, and it's like for not a real complicated scene, because you can heighten everything in your scene, and if you do, it has so much more. I remember doing it with car ads. Like when the car comes down, you hear the when it hits the ground, so it seems tough, and and these are things that communicate. But it's that sound design that makes that communication happen. Otherwise, especially I'm doing special effects when you're doing them and you don't have the sound effects. They're just so silly.
Yeah.
You're like this thing, and then all of a sudden you put sound effects. You're like, whoa, like it's
that's
way more impressive.
That's like the force field or whatever, right? Like a lot of these visual effects are not that impressive without the sounds.
Yeah,
and there's just something psychological that happens when the thing pops up and you can hear it burst into existence, and you hear the hum or the glow or whatever it is, for sure. And you mentioned just like editing, you want sound design to be invisible. What's the silent? That can't be right. The audio version of invisibility is silent, right? So
yeah, it would be
that's not really
unnoticed.
Yeah, unnoticed at any rate. But I think that, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it seems like most people understand some of the basics of film editing more than they understand sound design. As in, like, poor editing, people notice right away. Poor sound design, I don't know, it's a little harder to pick up, and it only becomes really visible or really noticeable when sounds are just like way out of place.
It's all timing. If your timing is off with sound design, people will be like, "What the heck is this?" Because all of a sudden, the guy leans over and then a fart happens 5 minutes later. It doesn't, it just won't work, right? But if it happens at the right time, it's the timing works, and I think that's, just the same as the beating of your edit. The sound effects need to have that counterplay. As you would, thinking about where to place them and whatnot. And it's totally one of those things you could spend hours on, and it's like no one's going to say, wow, I was really impressed by those sound effects. But if they were off, people would be like, your video sucks. I've done too many times where you didn't have enough time to put a bunch of sound effects, and it's like the client didn't like it. And you're like, man, I spent so much time making it look like this. I'm going to do the revisions. When I do, I'm going to add a bunch of sound effects, and then they're going to just love it. And every time, whoa, it's so much better now. It's like I didn't hardly do anything. I just gave it a zap noise.
Yeah, for sure. But even when we think of kind of wild sound effects, those can become invisible or unnoticeable or whatever after a while, right? You talked about the squeaking sound of SpongeBob's shoes, and I don't know how much SpongeBob you guys have seen. I've seen, I don't know, 20 episodes maybe.
Every episode. My son loves
I actually was
SpongeBob.
thinking about SpongeBob earlier in the Doodle Bob. I don't know if you guys have seen that episode.
Oh, yeah. I'm just happy I like SpongeBob because I've seen so much of it.
So eventually you stop hearing SpongeBob's squeaky shoes.
Totally.
It's just that's just how it is. That's the world that SpongeBob is in.
Yeah.
And that's natural. It's as natural as, the punching sound effects and fight scenes.
Yeah, or like the sound of a Jetsons little car and the Jetsons, that kind of thing. Just has a sound. That's the sound of that. And you just accept it. And I think it's a lot easier, especially when you have an extended sense of disbelief, right? Like you're in a world that's not like your own. Cool, I can accept everything that's abnormal here. But when it's really close to home and something's a little different, you're like, Kind of reminds me of like if a film was shot in your own house, in your own like city, and they, a scene, all of a sudden they take a right, and you're like, that's the right turn doesn't get you there.
Yeah, they turn right and suddenly they're across town.
Yeah, they're across town. You're like, what? That doesn't, because spatially those things are connected, but no one else does without that context. And yeah, I think you're right on the nose. Like, honestly, just trying to get sound design, as long as the timing is right, there's going to be better and worse, but it's going to be always better than nothing.
Yep.
And sound designers mix all sorts of things. I think we've done a lot of Star Wars references, but like the pod racers and the Phantom Menace, like those are a combination of like a whole bunch of different sounds together. And that's sometimes the creative part of it. And other times it's like you're trying to do that realism where it's actually that thing that you're doing. And with sound design, I think even sound design, you even have mixing, the idea of relative volumes and stuff to be able to bring thought in there. And especially if you have your contents can be viewed in a place where a stereo field is actually going to be able to be experienced, unlike being watched off a phone or something. But in a theater, using the stereo field is a really important thing, because you can have a car coming from over the left of the viewer's shoulder coming towards the screen. That brings you into the scene in a way that's going to do the opposite of I'm in a movie theater. It's going to be I'm in this scene. I'm just invisible.
I have a random thought real quick. I wonder if sound designers use some of the same sounds across different movies, because I swear to God, sorry if that offended anybody, I've noticed that there's two sounds that I've heard across multiple movies. I swear it's the exact same sound effect. One is a man screaming, and a lot of it happens in like battle scenes when a guy gets thrown over the edge and it's like, ah! Like, okay, so I swear I've heard that.
So there's a name for that sound effect? Yeah. It's called the Wilhelm scream, and his name's Wilhelm.
Okay, so that's real.
And it's the exact same sound effect since like the 30s or something like that.
Okay, so that's a real thing. And then the other one is a horse sound, and it's basically kind of like a scared horse noise, like a neigh, but it's more aggressive. And I swear I've seen it in multiple movies with horses. So those two, okay, I'm glad that's a thing that I totally have not been imagining, that I've been hearing the same man.
We should probably get the Wilhelm scream on our sound effects board.
It's it's totally like the Western, the guy gets shot and falls off the cliff.
Yeah.
That's the sound.
It's in Star Wars. I mean, it's in so many movies.
Okay.
One of the guys that taught me how to do video editing, he always puts Three Stooges sound effects in everything. He does. That's his signature and thing. He's like, I can't put my name on things, but I know if I put some whoop, 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 or those kinds of things in a scene, he's like, I can identify it as my work, or someone ever cared to find it or whatever. And everything he does, and it's always a fun thing to, if you see his work, being like, where is he going to use it? And sometimes it's bold. Sometimes it's like a transition, and it's like
I used to do that with visuals. I used to put Nosferatu the vampire in everything that I did.
I feel like that was kind of popular for a bit. In like the meme kind of universe, like having him pop up. No? I feel like I remember seeing that.
But absolutely, sound designers are going to the same library. I mean, I go to the same sound library for my sound, because it's like I have a sound that works really good as a whoosh, of something coming into the scene. Why would I ever want to go look for another one if I have one that's rad?
Why would I want another whoosh?
Yeah, why exactly. And once I find, and I'm actually still searching, but for the perfect whoosh. And then I can stop looking. I'll just cut that from here.
Hey, is my computer turned? Give me like a quarter volume on there. It's the USB slider right there. That one. Yeah, give me that. Let's see if this comes through.
Yeah, that one. That's it.
You can put the Wilhelm scream in your.
Yeah, that's exactly the one I was talking about. I was like, I swear I've heard this in like so many movies.
Yeah, that's funny.
Okay, well now I know. The Wilhelm scream. Yeah?
That's the one, yeah.
Okay. Now I got to find the horse one, because I swear that's
I don't know about the horse one. I swear there's a horse one, I'm sure there is.
It might not have a name. Yeah. The Wilhelm scream is like...
Famous.
it has a name, but that like every Tarantino, like anybody that wants to like put a homage to old cinema, it's in there. It's very much like a tip of the hat to those that came before you. It's quite a tradition using that scream.
Okay, cool. What about
okay.
Oh, I was going to say software. Did we want to talk about editing software?
Editing software, is that on the list?
You just have editing. You have editing software at the end. We can talk about that a little bit of what people use and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know. I mean, I feel like every time I do a sound work, I just stay in the editing in Premiere or whatever video editing software.
If you're just sequencing sound effects, that's totally all you need. You just need a timeline and a place to line up the sound effects to the motion that you're trying to connect it with, or the whatever you're trying to connect it with. I like to dive in a little deeper. I love to augment and mess around with sound and try to do other things. I like using Audition because it couples well with Premiere. However, I've used Pro Tools, and Pro Tools is really great if you are creating a lot of original sounds. So like if you were doing a sound, like doing Foley or doing something, or Foley, doing something else on a sound stage or something like that. Usually that's definitely recording studio software, Pro Tools made by Avid. And so it's very synonymous with, of course, Media Encoder and whatnot. I've actually been using PreSonus Studio One, and it's a really, really strong program, but there's so many out there. And the cool thing is that there used to be so many different processes. Okay, like, oh, I want this to sound good. It's a combination of a compressor, an EQ, a phaser, and a reverb unit, and it does this sound. Maybe it's the way John Lennon sounded on one of his songs or something like that. Now, like, pretty much there's presets within programs to go, I want that, and you just find, and it puts them all together, and so it's like a preset of a bunch of different effects that you can then customize and do what have you. And there's just so much more to do in editing sound, because a lot of times now we're getting to a point with audio that the quality is so high that it can be manipulated so much, in the same way raw video can be manipulated more. The more data you have in the audio, the more you can affect it and not have it negatively, affected by whatever processing you're doing to it. But editing software, it's kind of a dime a dozen. It's whatever works for the work you're doing. But sequencing, like we said, a timing of things, sequencing it in your timeline, working with the audio program that is, if there is one coupled with your editor, that's probably the one to go with. I think no matter what level of video editor you're using, there is a companion audio program with it almost always.
And we should underscore the fact that sound design doesn't inherently mean making your own sound effects for everything.
No, in fact, I don't make my own sound effects, but never. Yeah. It's almost always easier just to go online and find freesounds.org as a good place to go. There's a couple different places that get sound effects, or if you subscribe to a music library, a lot of times there's sound effects there too. Like I said, I have a library of sound effects that I've over the years come together, along with like a whole bunch of different other things like alpha channel explosions and big fireballs and that kind of thing. Things that like you'd use once in a blue moon, but if you needed it might be hard to find.
Yeah, and I think that in this case, I forgot where I was going with this. Yeah, it's always good to keep a library of sound effects handy for sure. And I think that for most video editors, you could do just about anything you want right in your video editing application. At least now, there used to be a piece of software with Adobe called Sound Booth,
yeah,
which is really like software. They designed it as software for video editors.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was very popular. But I used it all the time.
I hated it. I absolutely hated it. So we had Audition in CS3 or something like that in Adobe, and then all of a sudden they went to Sound Booth and excluded Audition. And I remember us at the station where I was working, we all kept the old version of Audition and continued to use it through two upgrades until they got rid of Sound Booth. And then finally we reintegrated. Well, and then they had Audition again, and we used it, but it was like we were very happy that all of a sudden it was back by CS6 at least.
It was really just for cutting up a voice track or something.
Yeah, it was so simple.
Single track.
Yeah, and I don't know. For me, I've always wanted more tools in my hands, but I think for most video people, audio is not the thing they're thinking first about, and it can be somewhat difficult in comparison. But hopefully, there's a lot out there now available as far as libraries and that kind of thing of sound effects that, like, you shouldn't struggle to get them. It's just more likely to find the right sound effect to put in, because you could try out, just like music for things, it could take forever to find the right sound effect for the thing. And that's when I come into actually making my own. Like, I've had times where I was looking for a Sharpie sound, sound Sharpie on a paper, and I just couldn't find one that had the pace of writing that I was doing, that was on screen. And I'm like, why don't I just put a microphone down and right along with it, and the timing will be perfect? And sure enough, it was first take, and it's like, I should have done that from the beginning. And just, it depends on what mode you're in. I definitely, when I'm editing, I'm ready to put things together. So I'm not I want to make something new to put this in here, because it's going to, mess up the flow of the edit.
So for anyone who's really interested in this topic, obviously we've got the course out, but if you go back, you can listen to Videomaker podcast episode number 10, where we talked to Joel Schreck, who was the sound editor of Jumanji, amongst a bunch of other movies.
He was super interesting, and it was so cool to hear how the teams work on a film with this kind of work, and just how many hands are in the pot on a big production when it comes to that. I mean, it shouldn't surprise on a real big production, but it is definitely something to manage.
Yeah. Should we take a quick break and come back and talk about camera angles?
Sounds good.
All right. We'll be right back. For years, Videomaker has been producing quality video training to help you take your video skills to the next level. Now you can access it all from a Videomaker Plus account. We've got courses covering everything from learning how to navigate your camera with our course on camera controls and settings, to learning about color grading, or even how to start a video business. Videomaker Plus has something for you. The Videomaker library is split into 4 levels. If you're just starting, try our inexpensive starter level membership, which gets you access to essential video training and a digital subscription to Videomaker magazine. For the most professional training, go all the way up to our professional tier membership, which gives you access to our entire library of training, which covers advanced concepts like running a video business or becoming a documentary filmmaker. Plus, the professional tier is the only membership with access to our popular webinar recordings. Plus, right now, for a limited time, you can get the professional tier of Videomaker Plus for the price of the creative tier. That's $100 savings. Sign up at videomaker.com/spring deal. That's videomaker.com/spring deal. Okay, we're back, and we're time to talk about camera angles. I'm actually kind of excited about this, and also I was a little bit disappointed that Haley hadn't finished Citizen Kane, because camera angles are so. It was such a groundbreaking film from the perspective of camera angles. Would have been appropriate. So, sort of to prep for this, I just wanted to bring up a visual here, which is, Citizen Kane makes quite a bit of use of these low angles, which, by the way, a low angled shot tends to, make the subject of the screen seem more powerful. And in this case, it's, I think that's Orson Welles there, shows him as like this really dominating character. And you can see that Orson Welles has a very low angle shot here to try to maximize how powerful Kane is. And I was just, we were talking about this the other day when Haley said she was going to watch this movie, and I recalled that Orson Welles put the camera in the floor, like they dug a hole out of the floor, and so that he could get it absolutely as low as possible, and so I found a shot of that whole setup right there.
You can bring back up.
Oh yeah, there you go. So yeah, this is the shot. Wow. They cut out a hole in the floor to put the camera down there. Now in this case, you could achieve the same thing today with a GoPro. You just get pretty low on the ground.
Well, but except for that shot wasn't very wide. So the idea of, if you want a wide angle looking shot from below, you're going to have to get really far away from them, or further away from them. Yeah. So, yeah. But yeah, GoPro would be easy. You can shoot a full body yourself while you're holding it.
Yeah, exactly.
But camera angles are really important in the way of how the subject matter is portrayed. But it's it's another tool of communication, right? So we get to communicate. In this case, this guy's really powerful. If you look down on someone, they seem more weak or more meager. From those are how the characters look, but you can also do something for story, like the Dutch angle, which is just, I used to call it, I learned it as the MTV angle, because everything in the 90s MTV was kind of a little bit askew. But that makes a feeling there. And so these are all you're just trying to facilitate the story in the best way possible. And through camera angles can be done. Now you can do that a lot of different ways. But it's really about trying to do what you're trying to communicate, right?
Exactly. This is an element of photography that sets it apart from just like actually witnessing something with your own eyes. You see the world from a different perspective. And you see this a lot with close-ups and extreme close-up shots, which are meant to be, emotional, because you're right there in someone's face and you can kind of feel what they're feeling. It's a very empathetic shot.
That makes me think of The Shining. That close-up shot of Jack Nicholson saying, "Here's Johnny," wouldn't be as menacing if it was...
Yeah, if it was 30 feet away.
Here's Johnny.
Yeah,
it's like
down
right
at the end of the hallway.
here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If it wasn't a close-up.
He's right there with an axe,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, oh, he's 30 feet away. You feel like you could just like turn and run away.
There's a very modern thing that I think all people that take selfies know is if you shoot yourself from below, you're going to get some chins. And if you shoot yourself from above, it's going to be more flattering. And so I think people, or it reminds me of the meme of like, the picture on her profile versus, the way she looked, or those kinds of things, that like angle makes a big difference on how flattering the subject matter is. And, I mean, this works on landmarks, showing how grand or big a building looks, if you shoot it from below versus like from a drone shot, which gives a lot more context to the location of the space. The angles. I mean, they're on so many Hollywood sets. They wouldn't shoot at certain angles because you'd notice that these are faux buildings. And so that angle really plays a lot into how a scene can look overall, or even the transition of you trying to be in a different location or something like that. But I think, if you just, every time you pull out your phone to take a selfie, I think just phones and cameras in people's hands or in their pockets all the time can get you thinking about what camera angles can do. Because if you just challenge yourself on the next photo you take, what would taking that photo from a different angle do? I always think of pictures of my son. I can always tell I took it versus when my wife did, because for her, it'd be like just trying to capture the moment. So she'd get it and pull it out. And I get busted like trying to take a picture real close to him sleeping.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm waking him up, or...
You gotta do the rule of thirds, Those are wide angle lenses, means you gotta get up close.
Do you take a lot of selfies, Chris?
I don't.
No?
No. Well, the only ones I do them with my son, but not
Okay, let's
personally.
a little very small survey here, a survey of two. So you guys are both Instagram users. I abandoned Instagram a while ago, but have you found that when people post selfies, that when they do a high angle shot, so they hold the camera up and points down and gets that flattering look, Chris, that you're talking about, what are the chances that person is single?
I don't know. I suppose, well, first of all, I think that people shooting, I think females tend to, not to stereotype or generalize, take that kind of shot, and it could be that they're single. I mean,
I have a hypothesis here that
yeah.
that we think that the high angle shot makes you look, it's flattering because you don't get the chins or anything, but there might be an element there of getting the high angle shots projects like vulnerability, which might be helpful when you're trying to like advertise your availability.
It's a mating call via photo.
So
exactly.
I take it back. I shoot plenty of selfies. I'm looking at my feed here, and like, the first, like 10 pictures, half of them are selfies. But
how many of them are high angle?
None.
Yeah. So I think that I suspect.
In fact, one of them's from very low angle.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's showing something tall behind.
So here's
me
my hypothesis. We should run some science on this. That single people tend to do the high angle. because they want to express vulnerability. They don't know this, but they're expressing vulnerability. They get married, or they have a serious relationship. The camera angles tend to drop towards a more realistic approach. And then they're expressing how much fun they're having. So they're like showing off the background and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, maybe this is only for some types of people like Chris, the camera angle continues to drop to a low angle where they want to project their power and prestige.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it was that. And I'm not sure if that shows off power and prestige. I think it starts to go into the like, you're real comfortable and you're wearing sweatpants all the time. You know, it's like, oh, I don't really care if I show off my chins now.
But if you look at like a promo for UFC or something, lots of low angles.
It is definitely more like not super low, but definitely I would say more like, I don't know, leg or height, leg height, thigh height, and then because you want that intimidation factor, right? So they're kind of like this.
So that low angle makes it feel like as a viewer they can squash you.
Yeah, which they definitely.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with UFC fighters, right?
That's interesting. I mean, I'm thinking now of WWF or WWE. My roommate in college was total film buff, but he just absolutely loved the production of wrestling. And he loved mostly the editing of like their highlight reels and that kind of thing. But you think of like a lot of those, they're not shooting, although they could very well shoot low. It was still almost always eye level in the ring. And that it might have been a choice, of UFC fighting to try to shoot lower, to have a different aesthetic, to set themselves apart from wrestling or boxing or some other kind of ring type sport. But you think about football. Football is just like the king of angles, right? But that's all about like being able to see the action from all the angles. It's like being there. They're trying to, give you an all-around experience. But if you're doing narrative work, all those angles are just really not necessary. It reminds me of what's the scene, the shower scene.
Psycho.
In Psycho, that there's 44 different camera angles in a like 100-second scene. It's just insane, the amount of angles. And I mean, it's good to get coverage, but that's a little excessive. Maybe not for that scene. I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't judge like classic cinema.
Well, I feel like you could watch a lot of fight scenes today. Like you watch any of the Bourne movies and the fight scenes, and they're shaky and cutting all the time. The weird thing about Psycho, that scene was, it was back and forth between, I forgot the actress's name, the woman and then the knife coming back, and then the woman and then the knife coming back. I think the idea was that these cuts are showing, how many times she was stabbed.
Yeah, and how intense the scene was and whatnot. With camera angles, I think the fight clubs are a really good example of this. So they're doing their like, fighting in the round and being behind one, whoever's trying to be the star. There's a lot of angles to shoot different things. Like you just thinking about fighting, we've talked about a lot of different ways to show that off. So your angle can really play a role in how you're representing your characters. I remember I made a commercial it was a trucking place. And the owner was named Little John, and he was a really big dude, as you would expect, I think, with a name like that. But it was because he was like, they really respected as a guy that could fix big trucks, because he was such a big guy. So it was really important. They're like, we want to show him just super tough at the end of his day. So he's got grease on his hands and all that kind of stuff. So like, you got a problem, Little John can fix you up, and it made a big difference. And like, the guy wasn't any taller than I am.
You're pretty tall.
Yeah, but like this guy looked like a lumberjack, just like, the biggest ever from the scene. Whereas, as soon as you put someone next to him, you wouldn't necessarily feel like you'd be any bigger. Schwarzenegger, Tom Cruise, they're all short people. I thought
Schwarzenegger was pretty tall too.
No.
Let's fact check this.
I've been around him. He felt a lot shorter. Sylvester Stallone, not tall.
Well, maybe he's shorter than you would expect.
Yeah. I mean,
Schwarzenegger is 6'2".
Schwarzenegger 6'2"?
That's still
Tom Cruise is short.
He's old though.
Tom Cruise, he's like 5'6" or so.
How tall?
And I hear he can't read.
Don't come after us, Tom Cruise.
He memorizes everything. He doesn't need to read. Scientology is doing it for him. Shouldn't talk about that. They'll come after us too.
Tom Cruise 5'7".
5'7" for a man is pretty short.
Yeah, but below average. I mean, but that's the thing with movie making, right? So
well, then you cast people that are going to give scale to the scene, to wherever the main character is.
So we've talked about high and low angles, and a little bit about sort of the eye level angles. How about the field of view, right? So actually, we talked a little bit about establishing shots in terms of the visual language of film last week. But establishing shots are, basically the widest, I don't want to say the widest, but a very wide angle shot, which functions, it's a highly functional shot to include in most scenes.
Yeah, I think let's define. So field of view is the area of which the frame fills, right? So if you have a wide field of view, you are using a wide angle lens, and the number on the lens is going to be smaller. So a 16 millimeter lens is a very wide angle lens, versus something that's telephoto, which is a very narrow field of view. And you're talking about a very small amount of area being seen. And this is something to play into a lot of things. So like if you think about, as we were talking about Bourne Identity earlier, right? The idea of these like quick cut handheld shots, they're typically wide angle and close to the subject. And the thing about that is you can have a lot of shake in the camera, and it's not going to necessarily. Now, I think some of the scenes in the Bourne trilogy could make some people sick. It is definitely very, very fast action and whatnot, but it's not. If it was all shot telephoto, it would be even harder because the shake would just be like what because you're talking about moving a millimeter of viewing angle of area by very little. So the field of view plays a big role in how your angle plays in, right? So if you have a wide view from below, that's the hero shot, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to look bigger at the top of the screen. He's going to be elongated, so he seems even taller. But if you tried to do that same shot, but with a telephoto lens, one, you'd have to dig a hole in the ground, and two, space would be compressed, so they wouldn't look as large.
Haley got an example here of this lens compression. Sorry to anyone who is, just listening here. What I'm showing now is an example of lens compression, what it does to people's faces. And this is space generally, but it's really noticeable on a face. So you can't really read the text there, but in the top left, we're looking at a shot of a woman at 150 millimeter lens. And her face is very kind of flattened out. And, as you sort of go through these different focal lengths, it starts to look real at around 50 millimeters. Like that's what you would see in real life.
And people call that normal.
Yes, a
normal field of view.
And I think this one goes all the way down to 19 millimeters. And now she's got like this big long nose, and her ears are like way back, wrapped around the backside of her head. As space is not compressed but expanded.
Expanded. If you elongated, if you're ever filming someone and they want to seem thinner, shoot them with a more telephoto lens. Now, hopefully you have the space to be able to do that, but what it'll do is it'll compress this. Now, we're not going to make someone that's 500 pounds look like they're 100 pounds. It's not going to work. But you might be able to make someone with a big nose the nose might not be as apparent when you're using a longer telephoto lens. And so it can really play a role in how your person is, but it also, the amount of background you see, that's also a really important thing of like the wider it is, the more it shows. So the more is part of your scene or your framing. So there's more to think about versus narrower. I remember doing this a lot on commercial shoots, having to just hide an area. It's like, okay, you can't shoot too wide because we're going to see the messy desk or whatever thing we're not supposed to show. We're going to shoot a little bit more narrow because we want to make sure to put this in there. Or it also plays in distance from something, right? So if you ever seen the moon in an image and it just is huge on the horizon, That's because it was shot with a telephoto lens, and the space between us and the moon is being compressed so that the moon seems closer to us. Whereas if you shot that with a wide angle lens, the moon would seem further away.
It's like every shot of the moon you ever take with your smartphone looks like garbage.
Yeah, it's tiny, right? You need a really, it's like Nikon has this Coolpix camera that can go full frame moon. And it's because it can zoom to like 1,000 millimeter or some crazy number in a point and shoot. But yeah, it's very difficult it's not because the moon's small, it's because we're very far away from it. And the same kind of thing of like the Safari sun, rising, the sun's just ginormous. Now the curvature of the Earth also does this. So as the sun and the moon are closer to our horizon, they are going to appear larger. If you've ever seen
tend to get like a distortion effect going where the sun looks like it's kind of squished against the horizon.
Yeah. I mean, if you see like a harvest moon or a blood red moon or something like that, when you see them right, like a full moon right at the horizon, they're just ginormous. But then the higher they get in the sky, the less, the more context, of course, you have far more sky to compare it to versus, the horizon there that gives you some scale to it.
So in terms of kind of circling back to camera angles, this is kind of a camera angle thing. I guess we always think of it as a camera angle thing, at least at Videomaker. The wide, medium, close-up, extreme close-up. You can do all of those things with a variety of focal length lenses. Granted, it'll be very difficult to get a wide angle shot with a telephoto lens, but you could do it with get up into a helicopter, and you could shoot a wide angle shot of a house or something.
Totally.
But they all kind of have different purposes, right? And they have different moods, right? So like if someone is sitting alone in their living room, you're going to get a different feel if you're seeing that with an extremely wide shot where you're seeing the entire living room and this person who's like a small subject sitting on their couch, versus if you've got an extreme close-up and you can see every twitch of their, the muscles around their eyes. And so that sort of emotional connection that viewers have with the subject on screen is almost directly associated with how close that camera angle is.
Yeah, or how close, or how much of the frame is filled by that subject, right? So, in the same thing, you could shoot if you're shooting a telephoto lens, you could. Well, obviously, that's going to be an easy extreme close-up, right? You could get close on somebody's eye or whatever. But if you shot that wide, you would get a whole different feeling. You'd probably get a far more manic. If you're trying to show someone spun on drugs or something like that, it would be very easy to, if you get a wide angle lens, get right up in their face, and it's going to be there's going to be just so much different impact. But you got to think of the camera as the viewer's eye. You're controlling the eye through the camera, right? So if you're seeing someone and all you can see with your two eyes is someone's face, you're close to them. And so that's how we feel, so if you want to show intimacy in a scene, two lovers talking to each other in an intimate situation, you might have them both be full framed so that it feels like you're in, you're up close with them. But it could also be, of course, a close-up of an eyeball is super odd, and can be very jarring. So, because we don't ever quite get that close. It's harder to get, that close to small things.
One trick that movies use a lot, even if you're ever watching movies, you can always see this coming. When a movie is about to feature, a kiss between, two lovers in a scene, they tend to move the camera in such a way where it's kind of now going a little bit over the shoulder of one of the actors, so that their faces on screen appear to be much closer than they would if they were, shooting with the camera directly perpendicular to their eye line.
Yeah, so it wasn't like you're not showing a profile of the kiss.
Yeah, exactly. It's not exactly a profile. It's not exactly an over-the-shoulder shot that you would see in a normal dialogue. You got to see both faces clearly, but the camera angle is such that now you're seeing their faces like suddenly closer together than they actually are.
And in those situations, it's a camera trick. Is they could be, if they actually went in for a kiss, it might be that they kiss each other's ear, because it looks like, you cut it with them actually kissing or a close up of the lips or whatever. But
they start to move
or whatever. But if you're talking about the actual angle of them going, where you can see who both of them are in the same shot, but it's not this profile shot, they might be blocked differently so that they couldn't actually even kiss each other on the lips in that position. Which is definitely, I mean, a lot of camera angles are really interesting things. Watch the behind the scenes stuff of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit stuff. They do a lot of practical, like camera tricks of like having two people really far away from each other so that one can seem really large compared to the other one, but that if you just moved a little bit in your angle, you could see that there's so much distance between them, but there actually isn't. Those camera tricks are what, I mean, you talk about Charlie Chaplin and those, like, they did scenes where, you know, it looked like he's just about to jump out a window, but if you just showed a little bit wider, it's just to another ledge. You know, it's like most people, you know, like when someone jumps out a window, it's like there's a sleeping bag waiting for him out the window. There's more than a sleeping bag, but you know what I'm saying?
Just a sleeping bag.
Just a sleeping bag.
Hopefully that works.
You just go to bed. You know.
Well, usually it's like you see outside the window. You saw this on, you know, King Kong, right? Where it's inside the skyscraper and you look out the window and, you know, it's just like the sky, but there's the floor right on the other side of the window. So when someone gets pulled out the window or thrown, they're not falling even 10 feet. They're falling just like 2 feet.
Yeah.
So.
I always like it when the wall gets broken there. Saturday Night Live does that a lot. Someone will get thrown out a window and then all of a sudden they'll be like climbing up this, like show up again. But you know, camera angle. Here's a good one to that I think is a classic is the Batman from the original Batman series climbing a rope up the side of a building.
Yeah, that's a good practical effect.
Yeah, it's a little practical effect. Looks like, you know, it's just like, no, it's just a tilted camera.
I don't know, man. I feel like when I was a kid watching that, you know, the old Batman movie, I was like, that's totally fake. You know, because they had the whole thing, like the cape wasn't even falling down. It was like flushing.
True, but it was from the 60s, right? So when it actually came out, it might have been believable.
But
by the time you saw it in the 80s or 90s, you knew better.
I think that the Batman movie and the TV show was intentionally silly like that.
I think so. Yeah. It was endearingly goofy.
Yeah.
And it was because it was a live action for kids, really,
yeah.
Which hadn't been really done at that level, I think. But yeah, those practical effects, I think those are the type of things that are really fun to need and to be able to achieve, though they hardly ever come up. Like, you're not going to need to do a camera trick for much, but I definitely think that there's some of that, like, you know, magic in drawing a viewer's eye to something, that you can, you know, draw their eye to something else over here so that you can change something on scene so that can get out of scene or whatnot, you know, from, you know, a dolly moving just so a person can get out of the blocking and is no longer in the scene or what have you. That there can be a lot of things done with just the movement of the camera. I think one of the funnest things for field of view is the idea of a Zolly. You know, so you're pushing the camera towards a subject, but you're also using your lens to go wider. So the subject and the background now have a disconnect, because as you get closer, the scene gets wider. And so the subject size doesn't change, the background does. And so this is, you know, used a lot when someone's waking up from a dream, you know, all of a sudden, dolly, or they just realize they, you know, got bit by a radioactive bug and the world changes around them or whatever.
Yes, that's you're watching the change in lens compression over time.
Yeah.
You're watching, in the example we were looking at, the 150 millimeter to the 19 millimeter in real time as it adjusts, and the person's face doesn't move.
I did this with the Mavic 2 Zoom. They have a Zolly shot in it, and I did it at a football field. And so it's really interesting because, you know, you have 100 meters measured out, but as you're doing the Zolly, all of a sudden the field starts getting really squashed and starts to look like, you know, the width of like a basketball court, and then back out to being really long again. And that compression, space compression with movement and changing of the field of view is who started the Zolly? It was
the famous example. Well, Jaws has a really famous example.
I actually have that on my computer right now. I looked it up, and then it's that where he's realizing there's a shark in the water, and it goes,
exactly.
Yeah, it's usually like a self-realization type of trick of, like, all of a sudden reality hits you and you're, oh crap.
I think the original is I don't know if it's the original, but the one that really made it famous is Hitchcock, the vertigo effect.
Yeah.
So, you know, in Vertigo, he got vertigo from heights, you know. And the shot was like, I think it was him the hero's hanging, about to fall down off the edge of a building. And so it shifted from the shot where the focus is really on the hero to, it does the vertigo effect, and now the background reveals, and you can see how far up off the ground, the guy is.
Yeah.
And in that case, it achieved two things. So one, it had that kind of unnerving, realization kind of effect, but also the viewers could see, holy cow, this is a serious situation. He's going to fall.
Yeah, it helped reveal the situation better from someone maybe having tunnel vision to all of a sudden being into reality or whatnot.
Right.
But it's not an easy thing to achieve.
No, it's not.
Even with a motorized lens with the servo control and dolly, it's definitely a tricky one. But of course, it's not very. It's not like you can use it all the time. I think you could probably use the Zolly once in a movie.
Vertigo used it also looking down a staircase corridor, the stair, like going up a tower, and you could see the thing stretch out.
Like all of a sudden it seemed like the 10 steps you had to go up to are now hundreds or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, Haley, did we get through the whole list?
Yes, we did.
All right. So, we went over by quite a bit. No, actually not that much.
Yeah. 15 minutes or something.
But at any rate, if you want to learn more about this stuff, I encourage you to go to videomaker.com/courses and check out the new course on visual storytelling. We do a much better job on the course of, being a little bit more clear about talking about this stuff.
It's scripted.
Yeah, that's the benefit of scripted content, I guess. Right?
Boring. No, I'm just kidding. It's not boring. It's great. Go check it out.
I just want to say, if you've made it this far, it's obvious you like our podcast. So what I want to challenge our listeners to do right now is share it with a friend. If you got somebody else that likes podcasts, share us. We'd really like to get your recommendation. I think that goes a long way for me trying out new things. And sometimes I need to be shown the cool stuff. Like I'm not going to oh no, I'm not interested in that. I'm too cool for that. And all of a sudden a friend will be like, dude, you need to check this out.
Chris is not that cool.
I think I'm cool, but
just kidding.
I don't need to be told. My son tells me I'm not cool all the time. So it's totally fine. So tell a friend. It's, definitely, I think it's a gift if you enjoy it to share something you enjoy with a friend that might enjoy it too.
And if you have really stubborn friends, like some of my friends are, tell them to not listen to the podcast.
A little reverse psychology.
Yeah.
Or steal their phone and just subscribe.
Yeah.
There you go.
And hopefully they don't go, what is this crap? And then give us 1 star. That would be don't do that. Don't. Yeah.
I was going to do another sound effect. I don't think we have anything. Oh no, that's not what I was thinking.
That's good too.
That's Price is Right, isn't it?
You got to have your hand on the button at all times. So it's like, boom. Yeah.
Or play them all at the same time.
Yeah. All right. So maybe we'll call it there. We've got a lot more topics about visual storytelling, but I don't know when the next time we're going to get to it on the podcast is. Maybe next week.
We're going to be having guests here pretty soon. Pretty exciting. We're not going to tell you guys about them, who the guest is yet, but it will also include us being on their podcast. So
name rhymes with Bielberg. Not quite.
And Bomb Banks. It was so bad. I actually saw a note that was really cool. A guy sent a really old vintage typewriter to Tom Hanks to invite him to be on his podcast. Mm-hmm. And apparently Tom Hanks is really into old typewriters. Yeah. And so he wrote him back on the typewriter.
No thanks.
With the rejection.
Well, yeah, he was like, if you think you could get to my vanity, well, maybe. Man, the keys on this feel really good. Oh, okay, call my people. Here's the number.
That's funny.
His new movie just came out on Apple TV.
I did. I don't have Apple TV, so I won't.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Is it as good as Citizen Kane?
I haven't finished it yet, so
she
I can't
wouldn't
tell
know.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting way off.
All right, yeah. Maybe we'll call it there. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Thanks everyone for listening. As always, if you listen to the podcast and you like it, we would love it if you went to iTunes or Spotify and hit either subscribe or follow, depending on which application you use. It's really, really helpful for podcasts like ours. So for Haley LaPlante, Chris Monlux, and everyone here at Videomaker, I'm Mike Wilhelm, and you've been listening to the Videomaker podcast. We'll catch you next time.